think it's a dangerous game to play when you start to fuel nationalism, because of course it can always also turn against you as the government. So I think the government is conscious of that. One of the things I hear a lot is that they turn it on and off like a faucet, because it can be useful in some contexts, but it can also be volatile in others.
Is nationalism a tool?
No, I don't think so. With nationalism, you reject others. Can China afford it? No, we can't. We can't afford to alienate anyone. We need the world. The world needs China. So that's why the Chinese leadership is quite careful about nationalism. If you look around the world, there's something which is quite worrisome. There's a rising nationalism and a rising populism. Combination of these two is quite dangerous.
I think one of the things people are looking for overseas when they're trying to interpret the Chinese dream is, how far does China imagine this goes? I mean, for instance, militarily or diplomatically. Does it mean that there's still a role for the United States in Asia? Because President Obama has said we are a Pacific nation and will be in Asia for the rest of the century. So that sets up an inherent level of tension. And I think that's where it really is incumbent on this generation of leadership to figure out, how are we going to live together? I mean, we ultimately cannot afford, frankly, a war. Neither side can.
There are concerns about China becoming more militarily aggressive as it pursues a Chinese dream, of China also consuming more of the world's resources as it tries to enrich itself. Is that going to be a source of geopolitical tension?
No. You know, when we pursue our dream, how can we achieve it? Through military way? No, that's impossible. China is heavily dependent on the international community. Resources, we need to send our manufactured goods abroad. You see, we are deeply interdependent. If we, go to war, that will end up with a big failure. Everybody, and most people in China, we understand that. This is a wrong way.
I think that's a really important point. You know, when we talk about where China is headed, it can sometimes sound to us overseas that that they're beating the drums of nationalism and that they're trying to prepare for some sort of conquest. The reality is, I don't think that's part of where Chinese leaders want to go. The danger is about unintended consequences. It's about when we've got a Pacific that is getting crowded because we've got larger navies, when we've got people fighting over ground. That's where you run into trouble, is where something gets out of hand. And that's where that kind of communication is really important.
Yeah.
One final question. How should the rest of the world interpret the Chinese dream?
I think it's a fundamentally positive development, and I think we should see it in those terms. You know, there are going to be moments in the years ahead where we look at China and it feels threatening to us as Americans or as other big countries. But I think the reality is, this is a domestic message primarily. This is saying to Chinese people, it's your opportunity as an individual to go after what you want, and we're going to try to help you get there. The question, of course, is, can they do it?
The Chinese dream will not only benefit the Chinese, but also the rest of the world. In the past 35 years, we did that. We shared the benefits of the China's growth with the rest of the world. Otherwise, the China's growth would be impossible. In the future, we'll do the same. As I said earlier, this is the only way to lead China to rise peacefully.
Absolutely. I think the Western world should actually embrace this new development. You know, having a Chinese dream, having hope, having aspiration, and having, the dream of a better life for the future, I think can be only positive for the Chinese society as well as for the rest of the world.
Here's hoping for that. Jing Ulrich, Ambassador Wu Jianmin, and Evan Osnos, thank you so much for helping to interpret the Chinese dream.